Today we'll be taking a deep dive into Macbeth, arguably one of Shakespeare's most powerful plays. It's a tragedy packed with lessons about ambition, power, guilt, and the way unchecked desires can completely derail a person's life. We're going to break this down in such a way that you can get a clear picture of how this tragedy unfolds, and hopefully you'll see just how much of it relates to things that we do in life, especially when ambition takes control. Act 1. Ambition is lit. We kick off the play with these three witches. Now, before you think that they're just some random characters thrown in for spooky effect, know that these three witches represent a lot more. They symbolize the darker forces that can influence human desires. Kind of like when you let your imagination run wild and start convincing yourself of things you know deep down aren't true. The witches are here to plant seeds of ambition, and that's where everything starts to unravel for Macbeth. They talk about meeting Macbeth, which already hints at the fact that something's about to happen. You can almost feel the tension building right from the very first scene. So fast forward a little bit, and we meet Macbeth. Now, he is a warrior, a general, and very well respected. He just came back from a battle victorious alongside Banquo, which is his closest friend. These two are riding high, feeling pretty good about their accomplishments. But then suddenly they run into the witches. Now, this is the key moment, because what the witches tell Macbeth and Banquo sets everything into motion. They say Macbeth will become the Thane of Cawdor, basically a step up in ranks. And eventually, the witches predict for him that he will become the King of Scotland. Banquo, on the other hand, is told that while he won't be king, his descendants will sit on the throne. So already we've got the seeds of ambition planted in Macbeth's head. He's thinking, well, I could be the king. Could this really happen? And this is where things start to change for him. Shortly after, Macbeth learns that he's actually been given the title of Thane of Cawdor, just like the witches predicted. And this is the moment that flips a switch in Macbeth's brain. Now he's really considering, what if the rest of what they said is true? That he's destined for the throne. Ambition has officially been sparked. But this isn't just a normal ambition, like wanting a promotion at work. No, this is a kind of ambition that makes you question everything, even your own morals. So now enter Lady Macbeth. Now, Macbeth's wife is not your average spouse. She's not content with her husband just climbing up in the ranks. She wants the crown, and she wants it now. When she hears about the witch's prophecy, she jumps on it, pushing Macbeth to take action. And when King Duncan shows up at their castle, he sees this as the perfect opportunity to make the prophecy a reality. She's all in, scheming and convincing Macbeth that if they don't act, they'll lose their shot at the crown forever. So now, think about this for a second. Here we have Macbeth, a man that is loyal, respected, and just coming in from a big victory at war. But his wife's influence and his own growing ambition are starting to make him question everything he once stood for. This is the first major turning point where we see Macbeth start to slip. Lady Macbeth knows exactly how to manipulate him and play on his fears, calling him weak if he hesitates. And eventually, Macbeth gives in. Act 2. Guilt's first grasp. Once Macbeth agrees to go through with the murder of King Duncan, you can already see the cracks forming. He's not a cold-blooded killer by nature, and even though he wants the crown, part of him knows this isn't the way to get it. But he's caught in this trap of ambition, and Lady Macbeth won't let him back out. So one night, while King Duncan is asleep, Macbeth does the unthinkable. He kills Duncan in cold blood. And the second he does it, you can feel the weight of guilt crashing down on him. It's like the thought of the act itself would be quick and clean, but the reality is it changes him forever. He's haunted by it immediately, hearing voices in his head, convinced he'll never sleep peacefully again. This is the moment where Macbeth starts to unravel mentally. But Lady Macbeth, she's not feeling that guilt. Not yet, anyway. She's cold as ice. She cleans up the murder scene and frames the guards and tells Macbeth to just keep it together. It's almost like she believes they can just walk away from this and everything will be fine. She's living in denial of the consequences. And when Duncan's murder is discovered the next morning, Macbeth plays his part. He acts shocked, even kills the guards to cover his tracks, making it look like he's avenging the king's death. Now, Duncan's sons, Malcolm and Donalbain, flee the country. They're not going to stick around and find out what happens next. And their escape makes them look guilty. So with the heirs out of the picture, Macbeth ascends to the throne. But here's the kicker. Even though he's king now, he's not at peace. You'd think achieving his goal would give him some satisfaction, but instead, it fuels more paranoia. And that's when the real downfall begins. Act 3. Paranoia and fear take over. Now that Macbeth is king, you might think he'd be able to relax and enjoy his new power, but no. His ambition isn't satisfied. Instead, he's consumed by paranoia. And who's at the center of this paranoia? Banquo. Remember the prophecy about Banquo's descendants becoming kings? Well, Macbeth hasn't forgotten that part of the prophecy either, and it's eating him alive. He can't stand the idea that he did all the dirty work, killing King Duncan, only for Banquo's line to inherit the throne eventually. So what does he do? He orders the murder of Banquo and his son, Fleance. Now let's pause here for a second. This is where Macbeth's paranoia hit a new level. He's already king. He already got what he wanted. But the thought of Banquo's descendants sitting on the throne one day drives him to more violence. This is what happens when ambition and fear take control. You keep reaching for more and more, even when you already have everything. So Macbeth sends out these murderers to kill Banquo and Fleance. They manage to kill Banquo, but Fleance escapes, the son. And that loose end is going to haunt Macbeth. So then comes the famous banquet scene. Macbeth is trying to play it cool, hosting this big dinner for his nobles, acting like everything's fine. But here's the problem. Banquo's ghost shows up. Now, no one else can see the ghost, only Macbeth. And this is where things really start to unravel for him. He freaks out in front of everybody, and he's talking to the ghost that only he can see. Imagine being one of the nobles at this feast, watching your king act like he's crazy. It's not very reassuring. You can see that Macbeth's grip on reality is slipping, and his guests are starting to question whether he's truly fit to rule. Act 4, a false sense of invincibility. At this point, Macbeth is desperate. He needs answers. So he goes back to the witches. Now, these witches, they're playing him. They give him just enough information to make him feel invincible, but really, they're setting him up for his final downfall. They show him 3 apparitions. The first warns him to beware of Macduff. The second says no one born of a woman can harm him. And the third tells him he'll be safe until Birnam Wood comes to Dunsinane Hill. Now, Macbeth latches on to these prophecies, especially the one about not being harmed by anyone born of a woman. After all, with all persons being born of a woman, he thinks he's untouchable. He is invincible. Nobody could meet that definition. After all, who isn't born of a woman? And as for Birnam Wood coming to Dunsinane Hill, well, how is an entire forest going to move locations? So with this false sense of security, Macbeth orders the murder of Macduff's family just to be safe. But what he doesn't realize is that this sense of invincibility is exactly what's going to lead to his downfall. Meanwhile, Macduff has fled to England, where he joins forces with Malcolm, who is Duncan's son. Together, they're gathering an army to take back the throne. While Macbeth is feeling invincible, his enemies are quietly closing in. Act 5, the collapse of guilt and power. Now, Lady Macbeth, who was once the mastermind behind all of this, is now crumbling under the weight of her guilt. She starts sleepwalking, obsessively trying to wash imaginary bloodstains from her hands. This is one of the most iconic images from the play, her trying to cleanse herself of the guilt that has consumed her. But the thing about guilt is that it doesn't go away so easily. It's like a stain you can't wash out. Eventually, she succumbs to it. The ambition that once drove her is now slowly destroying her. At the same time, Malcolm's forces are advancing on Malcolm's castle. Remember the prophecy about Burnham Wood Forest? Well, Malcolm's soldiers use branches from the trees to camouflage their approach, making it look like the forest is slowly moving. Suddenly, that impossible prophecy is coming true, and Macbeth starts to realize he has been played by the witches. In the final battle, Macbeth faces Macduff. Macbeth still believes he's invincible. After all, no one born of a woman can harm him. But then Macduff reveals that he was born by cesarean section, meaning he wasn't born of a woman in the traditional sense. As he says it, he was ripped untimely from his mother's womb, again, born by cesarean section. And just like that, Macbeth's last hope is shattered. He realizes that everything the witches told him was true, but twisted, and he's been doomed from the start. Macduff kills him, and with that, Malcolm takes the throne, restoring order to Scotland, even as the witches predicted. Conclusion, the bigger picture. So what's the lesson here? Well, Macbeth isn't just a story about a man that wanted to be king. It's about what happens when ambition goes unchecked, when power is sought without regard for the consequences, and when guilt consumes a person from the inside out. Macbeth could have lived a respected, honorable life, but the moment he let his ambition control him, he set himself on a path of destruction. And it wasn't just him. Lady Macbeth as well ended up being consumed by the consequences of her actions. The supernatural elements, like the witches, aren't just for show. They represent the darker forces that can influence our thoughts and decisions. The witches didn't force Macbeth to do anything. They just planted the idea. But once that idea took root, it grew into something uncontrollable. This is a reminder that in life, we have to be careful about what we let influence us. Ambition, fear, guilt, these things can take over if we are not mindful. In the end, Macbeth's story is a cautionary tale. It's a reminder that power without conscience or morality leads to ruin, and that no matter how invincible we might feel, there are always consequences for our actions. And that is a lesson that's just as relevant today as it was in Shakespeare's time. I hope you enjoyed the synopsis, and if you're interested in reading the full actual work or listening to it on audiobook, there's a link in the description as well as in the top comment. You can use that to order it off Amazon and have it delivered to you right away.